Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, okay. Thanks. Pranam, Jai Jinendra. Welcome everybody. We carry on with our story of Bhagwan Parshvanath, the 23rd TIRTHANKAR. The subject matter is the actual events are pretty short and quick today. So it will give us an opportunity to learn a lot more about other things. So please feel free to write down your questions from this week or from previous weeks, and anything else that you want to know. We'll have plenty of time today to ask questions, so it might be very useful to sort of write them down. You can send them on the chat as well. Okay, let's start with the Pratna. Namo Arihantanam, Namo Sittanam, Namo Ayariyanam, Namo Ujjayanam, Namo Loe Sabba Sahunam, Eso Panchanamukaro, Sabba Pava Panasano, Mangalanancha Sabbe Simpadvam Havai Mangalam, Namo Arihantanam, Namo Sittanam, Namo Ayariyanam, Namo Ujjayanam, Namo Loe Sabba Sahunam, Eso Panchanamukaro Sabba Pava Panasano Mangalanancha Sabbe Simpadamam Havai Mangalam Namo Arihantanam Namo Sittanam Namo Ayariyanam Namo Ujjayanam Namo Loe Sabba Sahunam Eso Panchanamukaro Sabba Pava Panasano Mangalanancha Sabbe Simpadamam Havai Mangalam Veera Sarvasura Surendra Mahito Virambuda Sansrita Virena Swakarma Nichayo Viraya Nityam Nama Vira Tirthamidam Pravuttamatulam Vira Shagho Ram Tapo Vire Sri Truti Kirtikanti Nichaya Sri Virabhadram Disa कमठे धरणेन्द्र च सोचितं कर्म कुर्वते प्रभुस्तुल्य मनोवृत्ति पार्श्वनाथ श्रियेस्तु वः अंगूठे अमृतवसे लप्तितणा भंडार श्री गुरु गौतम समरिये मनवांचित फलदाता भुवसगहरं पासं पासं वन्दामि कमगणमुखं विसहर विसनिनासं मङ्गलकल्याणावासं विसहरफुलिङ्गमन्तं कण्ठे धारयि जोषयामणो तसगहरोगमारि दुःठजराजन्ति उपसामं चिट्ठौ दुरिमन्तो तिजपणामो बहुफलो होय नर तिर्येषु विजिवा पावन्ति न दुःखदोगचम् तुह समते लब्धे चिन्तामणिकप्पाय वबुभय्ये पावन्ति अभिघ्रणं जीवाय रामरं ठाणम् ये सन्थो महायस पतिभर निबरेण हियेण तादेव दिज्जबोहिं भवे भवे पास चंद Right. Bhagwan Parshvanath, or 23rd Tirthankar, we are following his life from the first life that is described in the Jivan Charitra. And as we know, that is the life when the soul's first steps of spiritual progress start. So the lives are not counted until the soul begins to develop or has developed samyaktva or is on the journey towards samyaktva. And here, as we have learned, in the first life, Marubhuti was the son of a Raj Purohit, and he had a brother called Kamat. Marubhuti was a very calm and a sedate person and very immersed in his life of detachment and not very interested in worldly life. And as we've learned, an incident happened whereby his brother, who was not so inclined, who was very much sensual person, and he did not have the same moral framework under which he conducted himself, and he ends up seducing his brother's wife, and ultimately when that fact comes out, the king punishes him by banishing him from the kingdom, and the seeds of hatred are sown in Kamat's mind, and that carries on for life after life. And we saw that at the end of that particular life, as Marubhuti and Kamat, Kamat is responsible for Marubhuti's death, and in the subsequent life, Marubhuti, because of the suffering from pain and the loss of his equanimity at the time of death, he binds a karma to take him to the next life as an elephant. And again, in this life, they both meet. Marubhuti, the elephant, comes into contact with King Arvind, who was the king in his previous life as Marubhuti, and is the same person who then is now a monk, and preaches to the elephant Marubhuti, who then remembers his past life as Marubhuti, the Purohit's son, and remembers all that he had learned then, and remembers with regret that because of his loss of equanimity and his lack of total commitment towards the end, he has ended up in life as an elephant. Kamat, meanwhile, has been born as a very poisonous snake, who comes to the same forest, and as a result of the connections from previous life, he comes in contact with the elephant, and as even without realizing why, uh, he's just very violent towards the elephant and ends up killing the elephant, who was already by this time deep into religious practice, even as an elephant, because by this time he has remembered his past life and he has been taught the ways of a Shravak. Uh, so Marubhuti, the elephant, then uh, dies and his soul goes to uh, Devlok. And we learned that Marubhuti, the elephant's soul, spends a long time in Devlok, and about equivalent amount of time Kamat spends in Narak, having lived his life in total violence and anger. From there, that was the third life. We will start learning about the fourth life. And now I'm going to share my slides now. So this is the life of both of them. Bhagwan Parshvanath's soul from Devlok and Kamat's soul from Narak. And this is the story of how the two of them meet again in this life. Just to recap, Bhagwan Parshvanath and Kamat, life 1, Marubhuti and Kamat, life 2, elephant and snake, life 3 in Devlok and in Narak. And this is life 4. Let's learn about that. Who was Kiran Veg? In the land of Mavide Kshetra, a particular area called Sukach. So Mavide Kshetras are divided into 32 Vijayas each. Vijayas are sort of huge continents the size of a huge world, separated by mountain ranges, I presume. There are 5 Mavide Kshetras in the Adidvip, meaning 2.5 Dvips. We are in Bharat Kshetra of Jambudvip, and the nearest Mavide Kshetra to us is north of Bharat Kshetra. We are at the southern tip of Jambudvip, and Mavide Kshetra is in the middle, and in the same position as where Bharat Kshetra is, right at the other end of the Jambudvip is Airavat Kshetra. The Mavide Kshetra in the middle, one of the Vijayas there is called Sukach, and that also has a mountain range called Vaitadhya. And in that mountain range, there is a very prosperous city-state called Tilaka. And the mountain ranges of Vaitadhya usually have people called Vidyadhars, and we'll come to that as who are Vidyadhars. The other name for them is Khechar. So here there was a king called Vidyutgati, and he had a queen or wife called Karaktilka, who was his principal wife. The soul of Bhagwan Parshvanath from the 8th Devlok, when his life finishes there, he is conceived in the womb of Queen Kanaktilka, who is the wife of Vidyutgati, a king in the city-state of Tilka. Soon after he's born, he is a prince. He becomes well learned in all the skills as a prince. And once he has gained all the knowledge and he is now a young man, his father, Vidyutgati, hands over the reins of the kingdom to him. And he himself becomes a monk under the guru called Shrut Sagar. The name of Bhagwan Parshvanath's life in this particular birth is called Kiran Veg. Kiran Veg is very learned and a very religious person right from the time that he was born. And he's enjoying the fruits of all the trappings of a kingdom with detachment. He was married to a princess called Padmavati, and she gives birth to a son called Kiran Tej. Kiran Veg, because they are all Vidyadhars, they accomplish some great Vidyas. And there's a mention here that Anukrame Kavachdhari અને વિદ્યાના સાધનારો એ મોટો મનવાળો પુત્ર જાણે કિરણ વેગની બીજી મૂર્તિ હોય એવો દેખાવા लाग्यो. So Kiran Tej, who is the son of Kiran Veg is the soul of Bhagwan Parshvanath. Just then, another Muni Bhagwant, another Guru comes along, and Kiran Veg goes to listen to the Guru Bhagwant, and Guru Bhagwant explains to him that the most effort that one should, as a human being, put into is the particular purusharth of moksha. So all the different kinds of efforts that we engage in our lives are dharma, arth, kam, and moksha. Dharma is fulfilling our duties to our society, our parents, our siblings, and those dependent on us and the society in general. Earth is earning a living. Calm is enjoyment of the various pleasures of life and the efforts that we make in that. And the last Purusharth is called Moksha. Moksha is the particular effort that one needs to make to uh, be rid of the karmas and progress towards the path of total liberation of the soul. Those of you who remember your marriage vows have probably the Maharaj has probably conducted and reminded you of these four Purusharths. The four Feras in the wedding are a reflection of these four Purusharths. And we'll come to some questions that I have just to remind you of your marriage vows at that time. But here we're mentioning that because the particular effort towards achieving moksha is what the Muni Bhagwan is emphasizing for Kiran. What he says is, Hey Rajan, આ સંસાર રૂપ વનને વિશે ચતુર્થ પુરુષાર્થ, એટલે the fourth પુરુષાર્થ, મોક્ષ સાધવાનો સમર્થ એવું મનુષ્યપણું ઘણું દુર્લભ છે. So he reminds him that in the life as a human being, this purusharth or this particular effort is the most important, and it is only possible in this life as a human being. પ્રાપ્ત થયા છતાં પણ અવિવેકી અને મૂઢ પ્રાણી જેમ પામર જન અલ્પ મૂલ્યથી ઉત્તમ રત્નને ગુપ્ત ગુમાવે તેમ વિષય સેવનમાં તેને ગુમાવી દે છે. ચિરકાળ સેવેલો એ વિષયો જરૂર નરકમાં જ પાડે છે. So he reminds him that if you waste this life with just enjoying the pleasures of the flesh and the world around us and our possessions, etc., then we are going to lose this life without making any progress towards ultimate happiness. And it is something that then brings us constantly round to further pain and constant circulation in the life of sansar. And if we accumulate bad karmas, then often that takes us to narak. So one way of escaping narak is to make this effort to liberate our souls, and that is only possible in this life as a human being. મોક્ષ ફળવાળો સર્વજ્ઞ ભાષે ધર્મ નિરંતર સેવા યોગ્ય છે. So he reminds him that the dharma that takes you to moksha is what you need to focus on. And listening to all this sermon at that time, Kiran becomes very detached from his worldly life and goes back to his kingdom and puts his son on the throne and asks him to carry on the responsibilities as a king, and he goes back to the Muni Bhagwan and becomes a monk under his auspices. Over a period of time, he learns all the shastras and becomes very proficient in that, and when he feels and his guru feels that he is now ready to be able to walk alone in his path towards further penance and elevation, then permission is given for him to go into the forest on his own without the need of the other sadhu bhagwans around him. And Kiran Ved, the Muni, now goes out into the forest, and he goes up to a mountain range called Hemgiri and stands in meditation there. The word that is used is Hemgiri ni upar te pratima dharan karine raya. And he is performing severe penance, and he is accepting all the suffering that accompanies, the physical suffering that accompanies this kind of penance with complete equanimity. And he was constantly at peace with himself and with the world around him and in total meditation. And he spends a long time in this way alone in the forest. Kamat's soul, we know, who had gone to Narak, the fifth Narak, is born again in this same mountain range, Himgiri, as a huge snake. One of the other books describes this as a ajgar or a python. And I think this particular illustration also depicts that. The snake moving about in the forest comes to the place where this Kiranveg Muni Bhagwant is in deep meditation. He sees the Muni Bhagwant there and becomes extremely agitated and angry and rushes. તત્કાળ પૂર્વજન્મના વેરથી કોપ વડે અરુણ નેત્રવાળા થયેલા એ સર્પે તે મુનિને ચંદનના વૃક્ષની જેમ પોતાના શરીરથી વીંટી દીધો. So he engulfs his body, makes a tight circle, many circles around the body of this Muni Bhagwant, and then he bites him with lots of poison. તીવ્ર ઝેર વડે ભયંકર એવી દાડોથી મુનિને અનેક સ્થાને દંશ કર્યો. So he bites him in many different places, and he pours a lot of poison into him. The Muni Bhagwant, meanwhile, is thinking like this. He's thinking, અહો આ સર્પ કર્મના ક્ષયને માટે મારા પૂર્ણ ઉપકારી છે. So this particular snake is somebody that I owe a lot of thanks to. That because of him, because he has come to pour pain and suffering on me, I will be able to get rid of a lot of my karmas. And he has no anger or enmity towards this snake, even while he is suffering from the crushing by the snake and the multiple bites and the poison that has been poured into him. જરા પણ અપકારી નથી. લાંબો કાળ જીવીને પણ મારે કર્મનો ક્ષય જ કરવાનો છે. Even if I live long, all my energies are towards getting rid of my karmas, and the snake has come as somebody who is helping me in that journey. So I'm very grateful to him. તો તે હવે સ્વલ્પ સમયમાં કરી લઉં આ પ્રમાણે વિચારી આલોચના કરી બધા જગ જીવોને ખમાવીને. And knowing now that his end is near, that this particular life is coming to an end, he asks for forgiveness from all life. He completely clears his mind in deep meditation and comes to a state of total peace, though he was in a state of total peace, but knowing that his life is coming to an end and that he is going to die soon, he makes a particular effort to completely free his mind from all kinds of negative thoughts. And he starts reciting Nokar mantra, સ્મરણ કરતા ધર્મ જ્ઞાનસ્થ એવા એ મુનિએ તત્કાળ અનશન ગ્રહણ કર્યું. So he decides that he is not going to eat and drink anything from then on. And he soon afterwards, he dies from all the injuries and the pain that has been, and this wounds that have been inflicted by this great snake Ajgar. And he dies and his soul is born in the 12th Devlok now. So in his previous life as a Dev, he was in the 8th Devlok. Now he's gone to 12th Devlok. જંબુદ્રુમાં વર્ત નામના વિમાનને વિશે 22 સાગરોપમના આયુષ્યનો દેવતો થયો. So previously his life in the Devlok was of 17 sagropam. In this life, because he is at a much higher level now, his lifespan is 22 sagaropams, and he spends life in total peace and material happiness. But because of his spiritual elevation, he is not involved deeply in these material pleasures. They are just part of the life that he has there, and he experiences those with the detachment that has been bred into him over these few lifetimes. The snake, meanwhile, he roams about in this Hemgiri after killing the Muni Bhagwan. And sometime later, he gets consumed in a forest fire. What it says here, Pela Mahasarp e Hemgirini Sikharma Farto Farto Anyada Dawa Narthi Dagd Thai Gayo. So there must have been a forest fire, and he gets burnt in this forest fire. And his soul then is born in the Tammaprabha, the 6th Narak, with a lifespan of 22 sagarupams again. So the soul of the snake, that is the soul of Kamat, is born in a worse hell this time, with a very, very long lifespan. And here he has a body of 250 Dhanushya, and he is in constant suffering and pain in this life in Narak. And during that very long life, he has constant suffering and pain, whereas in that very long life of an equivalent length, Bhagwan Parshvanath Ji in the 12th Devlok has got absolutely no physical or material unhappiness. That was all with life 4. There are no other greater details in the story here. We will pick up on the next life after this, but as I said, we'll have plenty of time. I'm just going to ask you to switch on your videos if you like, and let's start some discussion. Shall we make this interactive? You can all see me, can't you?
Yes, we can see you.
Thank you, Sudhirbhai. Bijal, Sudhirbhai, Hasu, Shiraben, thank you. Okay. So just fire away any questions that you may have in your mind.
Sorry.
Go
Sorry,
on.
carry on. Yes.
No, go on.
Okay. In your last lecture, you were talking about the bull elephant, Marupati soul. He went to the upper Devlok, and the cow elephant, Varune's soul, went to a different lower Devlok. And I guess with his Avdignan, he realized that she wasn't enjoying herself there. So he was able to pull her up after probably hundreds of years, right? You said he was able to get her to the upper Devlok. How is that possible? And if somebody is able to go from Devlok, can they pull somebody out from Narak as well?
So you see, Devis are present only in a certain number of lower Devloks. And they have the Devs in the higher Devloks have the power to actually go and meet others, and if they so wish, they may be able to. So some Devis can move independently to many of the other higher Devloks. So that is the arrangement and how Devloks work. I'm not completely familiar with all the details there, but this is well described that because she kept on remembering him and was not actually enjoying the company of anybody else in the place where she was born. And Bhagwan Parshvanath ji, Marubhuti, realizing that she was constantly pining for him, brings her over. But I did mention that their lifespans would have been quite different. So Bhagwan Parshvanath's soul in that high Devlok would have had a much longer lifespan of 17 Sagrupam. So at some stage, in that brief period when the Devi's lifespan, part of that could be spent with him there, she would have most probably passed away from that life much before the Marubhuti's soul passed away into his next life. So there's a mention of the two of them again in this life. In the reference that I've got, there are no details of what happens to her afterwards and what happens subsequently. But to answer your other question, as can Devs actually go down to Narak? The answer to that is yes. If you remember, in the first 2 or 3 Naraks, I'm not sure whether it's just 2 or 3, there are Paramadhami Devs, whose duty it is to actually inflict the punishment. So Paramadhami Devs do not exist beyond that. So further down, when the hells are much worse, there are no Devs who are inflicting any kind of punishment. The Jeeves in the hell, in the Narak, are fighting with each other, and the place itself is extremely painful in many, many different ways. So the Devs, the Paramadhami Devs, it is their function to inflict this punishment, but there are other devs who can actually visit souls in Narak as well. But because those souls who are in Narak are destined to suffer all the bad karmas, all the pap that they have committed previously, they cannot pull them out of Narak. So their karmas would not allow. And there is a particular story, if you listen to, if you read the versions of Jain Mahabharat, there is a mention that Krishna, who was born, who is currently in Narak, was visited by his elder brother from the previous life, from Devlok. And in that meeting, and in that sort of Krishna, Vasudev is a soul with samyaktva. He's got high samyaktva. So even in that suffering in hell, he is suffering with equanimity. But the meeting between the two of them, I mean, I have a vague recollection. I don't know if Bharat Bhai is here, but if I'm making a mistake, I ask for forgiveness. But my understanding is that the conversation between Krishna and his brother Balram, who is now a Dev, when he visits him in Narak, is the cause of the whole series of the worship of Krishna, because the word is spread around by his brother Balram the Dev, and this whole sequence of Krishna worship and Vrindavan and all the stories are sort of propagated at that time by the power of that God, and that is how that whole particular sort of sequence starts. So there is a mention of something like this in the Jain Mahabharat. I read it many, many years ago, so I'm not current with this. And there is probably a reference of this in Trisasti Shalaka Purush Charitra. If you just remind me next week, I'll try and dig that out and go further into that particular aspect. But just briefly to answer your question, yes, devs can go to Narak, but you wouldn't be able to pull somebody down. And that Devi who was taken up to the higher Devlok would have still only experienced the pleasures that would be limited to the extent of her punya. It wouldn't necessarily. So again, there is a story about who was Narad. So Narad was somebody, and there is a mention that there were no Narads. Narad was a human being who was abducted by devs and then given special powers. And Narad then has the ability to move up and down. So there are lots of mentions of different things. I mean, I'm learning this from inference. All the details that are sort of should be given, so should be available, you would have to ask somebody who is much more knowledgeable than me. So our Guru Bhagwans or maybe Hiteshbhai would know greater detail of the difference in the different devloks. So again, these devloks that we're talking about are much higher, where we live. And below that, there are devloks called Bhavanpati devloks. So in the bulk of the land mass in the middle, below that, there are, beyond a certain distance, there are avasis, or they're called sort of large palaces or spaces of Bhavanpati devs, and there are many different types of Bhavanpati devs.
Thank you.
I hope that helps. Yeah.
Ajitbhai.
Ram Vijay.
Actually, I've heard similar about Sita, who couldn't bear
Yes.
the suffering of Lakshman and tried to help but wasn't able to.
Yeah.
But my question was relating to Mahavidya Kshetra, where Bhagwan Parshvanath Ji was born, which you just referred to.
Mm-hmm.
And this might be my misunderstanding, but I thought, given that there's forever Tirthankar Bhagwan vicharta hoy in Mahavidya Kshetra,
Mm-hmm.
that the souls there would be elevated. So somebody who's performed the kind of, or who has accumulated the kind of karma as karma, I'm a bit astonished that he keeps bumping into Parshvanath Bhagwan and doing all these upsarg, even though Parshvanath Bhagwan is bearing everything and shedding his. And then they both go again to Devlok and Narak, and then they meet again. So is Mahavidya Kshetra the same as here, effectively, where it's...
Yes, it is like the fourth ara here. So basically, in Mahavidya Kshetra, the road to moksha is open because the land is, the atmosphere is conducive to further spiritual progress. But that doesn't mean that every soul who is born there has got the necessary elevation to progress spiritually. So even in Mahavidya Kshetra, one can accumulate karmas that takes us down to Narak, and then there may be all different kinds of souls born in Mahavidya Kshetra who may never progress spiritually. So just by virtue of being born there and just by virtue of being in the presence of Guru Bhagwant, or in the presence of a Tirthankar Paramatma doesn't necessarily guarantee elevation. So it is also said that all of us have probably been in the presence of a Tirthankar Paramatma not once, twice, but many, many, many times. And we are all still here. We are all still struggling. And we have probably had the benefit of a lot of elevated souls, not just Tirthankar Paramatmas, maybe other Keval Gnanis. And I wouldn't be surprised if many of us in this group around and all the people that we see have been monks in our previous lives. Not just once, many times. And a lot of our Guru Bhagwans actually mentioned that the reasons why we have not progressed spiritually are the reasons that we need to explore in this life and say, look, until now, everything that I may have done, the fact that we have this a fairly comfortable, sedate life, which is more or less pretty much materially fulfilled and comfortable. And that is due to a huge amount of punya that we've all acquired in past lives. And the fact that we have all actually come into contact with Jain Dharma, we've been born in Jain families, or otherwise we've been in contact of some kind. So not just Jain Dharma, but even hearing the idea that moksha exists, hearing the idea that the soul is separate from the body, all those things don't come easily. And when those things have been granted to us, there is no guarantee either that our future progress is going to be limited. It all depends on how much effort we individually make to move from wherever we are, and what is that next step. What does that look like is something that we constantly need to keep on thinking about. If you listen to some of the vyakhyans or the pravachans of all Adhyatmic gurus, whether they're Jains or non-Jains, of Sanatan gurus, the focus of Adhyatma is constantly on looking at yourself, is constantly on identifying your faults, is constantly on then understanding what the virtues that you need to develop are and where do they exist currently. So finding people where those virtues actually exist and then understanding them, appreciating them, understanding ourselves, appreciating our faults and any virtue that we might have and slowly develop them further and further. So in brief, Bijal, being born in Mahavidya Kshetra is no guarantee, absolutely, but we hope it might be.
Okay, thank you.
Kirit Mistry, I saw your video going on. Were you getting ready to ask a question? Feel free. Don't hesitate.
I have one more. Just brief. I wanted to ask. So that Muni was in Kausag in Dhyan. Is it possible to be in a state of Dhyan where he wouldn't even realize what was going to happen to him?
He would have realized what was happening to him. He's aware, but how you react to what is happening to you, to the body. You know, in higher levels of Dhyan, when one has achieved this particular state, when one has realized what is called Bhed Gnan, where I exist, where my life exists, is separate from the body that I am occupying. So that distinction of my body or this body is separate from me, and whatever is happening to that body is not happening to me. That body is my envelope for this particular existence. That body is temporary, and by its very nature, it was always designed to be temporary, no matter how long it appears to be. So even in the highest Devlok, where the lifespan is 33 Sagarupams, it is still temporary. It is never permanent. And that realization, this understanding called Ved Gnan, that I have developed the ability to separate myself from what is going on in my body, in my mind, in the world around me. And this Muni Bhagwans at a higher state of elevation and dhyan are able to do that. But there's a story that I heard this morning about a Jindat Seth, where it is possible even for Shravaks. And this particular story, I don't know, we will, I won't spend time on it just now unless it is something similar. When we can recite that separately, many of you may have heard this before, but I heard a slightly different take on this, but we can come to that. But it's possible for all of us to begin to understand and separate ourselves from what is not ours. And Adhyatmic or spiritual knowledge, once we get deeper into it, starts with the understanding, am I my body or not? Am I my mind or not? We say, Hu ane maru. Who am I or who kon chu ane maru suchi? And we identify with everything around us and we flow with it. So when something goes wrong in some things that we like, we get upset because we consider them as part of us. When a doctor pronounces a serious illness in our body, we get very anxious and upset. But there are people who have understood that this body was not mine anyway. It was meant to go bad at some stage or the other. And even if it didn't go bad, it was still going to end at some stage. So whenever it happens, it happens. That is my karma. And ultimately, the beginning of dharma actually starts with that understanding. Beginning of our spiritual progress starts with that understanding.
So he can just choose not to feel anything that's happening to his body.
The pain is there, but you choose not to focus on it. So you detach yourself, just like you are used to doing upas. So you've done siddhi-tap, varshi-tap, ambil. Your body demands food 3 times a day sometimes. I mean, all of us, people like me, are eating all the time and are eating 3 times a day. And you can fast for 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, 8 days without any difficulty. And your body is exhibiting those symptoms of hunger. Choose to ignore them. You choose to ignore the fact that you're losing weight. You choose to ignore your tiredness, but you actually are spiritually more aware that your mind is getting calmer, you are getting otherwise feeling well, and you choose to accept that. Similarly, one can completely ignore the pain. So Bhagwan Mahavir, it is said that when the only time that he actually cried out in pain in all those 12 and a half years of intense suffering that he suffered one after the other, was when the nail was pulled out of his ears, the nails were pulled out of his ears. And that cry was just something that erupted out of him. It wasn't a mental suffering at all. It was something that was physical, but the mind is still completely detached. After everything that Sangam did to him, he retains that total and absolute compassion towards Sangam. Even at the end of 6 months of somebody who is inflicting pain and injuries to him without any stop, constantly, he has no ill feeling towards that person at all. And he's not focusing on the pain that is being inflicted. And we say this kamat in Bhagavan Parshvanath's life is pouring rain and all kinds of things. And Dharanendra is saving Bhagwan from that by forming an umbrella of a hooded snake. To Bhagwan Parshvanath, they are both the same. One is not greater and one is no lesser. So that level of total detachment and not focusing on your bodily pain or the person who is inflicting it is the level that a lot of great people have actually got there. And slowly, if you read a lot of our stories, there are many people who have elevated themselves to that level and have suffered during their meditation, but have retained their equanimity. And as a result of that retention of their equanimity, they have destroyed huge amount of karmas.
No, thank you for the examples. That helps.
Yeah.
Pranam, Ajitbhai, can I ask you something?
Yeah, Sudhibhai.
Marubati and Kamat's soul, they are brushing in each other's life up to fourth life. I mean, the soul will be brushing each other for how long?
Well, as long as one of them achieves nirvana, so Bhagwan Parshvanath becomes Tirthankar Paramatma and then achieves nirvana, and the soul of Kamat, at some stage, what happens to him at that final life when he begins to maybe if he begins to understand, then his progress may start. But the two of them and the cycles of hatred that bring them together constantly have ended then for that life. But that other soul, Kamat soul, will carry on suffering from all the bad karmas that he's accumulated, and that carries on and on and on. And then if we say, listen to a similar story of Samraditya Kevli Charitra, the two of them have Gunsen and Agni Sharma have a life of Agni Sharma has developed this mutual hatred, and he keeps on ruining his life after life after life after life, like Kamat, and keeps on going into Narak. And Gunsen has made a total turnaround and is continuously getting elevated. And in the last life, when Gunsen is Samraditya, and Agni Sharma, remembering, not even knowingly, but just by instinct, he's remembering the enmity with this Muni Bhagwant, and he goes out to burn him while he's standing in meditation. And as he has lighted the fire and the Muni is being burned, just then the Muni Bhagwant has gone, Samraditya has gone into a level of Sapakshreni and has begun to get rid of his karmas very, very rapidly, and soon achieves Keval Gnan, and the Devas come down and put out the fire. And when Samraditya, the Kevali, sits on the Kamar that the Devas have started, and people start coming to listen to this Kevali Bhagwant, people are puzzled. Who was that person who was trying to burn you? And that is when he recites the story of their association over a period of 9 lives. But in that life, Samraditya, he goes to Nirvana, to Moksha. But Agni Sharma's life, that person who was holding on to that hatred, he, at that moment, the book says, he is puzzled by the fact, why am I doing this? Why did I go out and burn or try to burn this Muni Bhagwant, who is completely innocent, who has not done anything for me or to me? Why did I go and actually suddenly develop this hatred and decided that I want to go and burn him? Just out of the blue. And that thought in his mind and that hurt that he feels inside is said to be the beginning of his emancipation. So the roots of his spiritual progress starts with that thought in his mind, that I've done something wrong. I shouldn't have been burning somebody like this out of hatred. I don't know why I did this, but that was wrong. The realization, so the beginning of one's spiritual progress starts with the conscience. I am doing something wrong. This is wrong.
Is when they realize it.
When they realize it. So conscience, having a conscience is a hallmark of somebody who is actually got to a certain stage.
Also, in our day-to-day life, we do realize sometimes that we made a mistake in the past, and then we try. So that means the person we have this friction, the soul must have got together in a previous life.
Yeah. Not necessarily always. I mean, we obviously do start with fresh enmities as well as with fresh friendships. But a lot of our relationships with people around us and the fact that we are all sort of coming together, there would be some connection somewhere. How long back, it's very difficult to say. Could be in the immediate past life, could be in many lives before.
Thank you.
Ajitbhai,
Yes, Sarita.
I've got a question. I'm a little bit confused as to where you said that Marupati is in Devlock and Kamat is in Narak. So how do they come to and each other meet up again, and the enmity and the death happens? So from one part to the other part, how does one meet up again?
You see, our karmas bring us together from the ends of the universe. So it is that level of connection that, and ultimately that which is unfolding, the karma's nature designs its associations in that way, and it just happens. So our karmas bring us together. So for example, in this life, I've got my parents, my wife, my children, grandchildren. Is there a connection from somewhere in the past? And where were we before we met up again in this life? It's impossible to say, but could have been from anywhere in the universe. And it is this mutual attraction or mutual hatred that brings people together. And there is a very nice story about, say, for example, Bhagwan Mahavir. I mean, we all know about this particular story of the Gowal in his life as Triprushta Vasudev, who the Gowal was a musician, and Bhagwan Mahavir's Jeev as Triprushta Vasudev, in his power as the very powerful king, decides to punish this musician who has ignored his order to shut off the music as soon as he went to sleep. So because he had gone to sleep and the music carried on, he woke up again and was very upset and angry and says that you like to play on music and you like music so much, I'm going to punish you. And he pours molten lead into his ears.
Yeah.
Now that particular karma was many, many, many millions of years before. But the two of them come together, and that Gowal just decides to punish him for not looking after his cattle and not paying him any attention and giving answers to his questions by inserting nails into his ears. So that is that particular karma unfolding, and the two of them come together. And then there is another story. Bhagwan Mahavir sends Gautam Swami to a Gowal and says to him that go to this particular town or village and talk to this particular farmer who will listen to you. So Guru Gautam Gandhar goes there, talks to this farmer and convinces him like it was, Guru Gautam had great power. Anybody he talked with, he could convince them. He persuades him and he becomes very ready to become a monk and says, okay, I'll accept dharma. Let's go. So he says, no, I cannot give you Diksha. We have to go to my Guru. So they all come together. The two of them come together through Samvasran where Bhagwan Mahavir is. The farmer sees Bhagwan Mahavir from a distance, and Guru Gautam, he says, who is that person? He says, he's my Guru, and I'm taking him to you to take Diksha. He says, if he is your Guru, then I don't want any part of this. I'm going. So he develops a dislike for Bhagwan Mahavir right at that moment and then goes. And Bhagwan Mahavir obviously knew this would happen. And Gautam is puzzled. He says, why did this happen? And why did you send me to convince this particular farmer when you knew that this was going to happen? So Bhagwan Mahavir says that the fact that you actually moved him from where he was to this place to be willing to actually come and become a monk was the beginning of his spiritual elevation. But he had dislike for me because in my life as a Tripurusht Vasudev, I was responsible for his death because he was the lion that I went out to hunt and ripped him apart with my bare hands because he was the Vasudev and this lion. And I think part of the story is that Gautam Swami was actually the charioteer of the Tripurusht Vasudev. And when the lion is actually lying down, suffering from the pain of the wounds that has been inflicted to him by Tripurusht Vasudev with his bare hands, he sits down with the lion for a while and says, don't be disheartened. You are the king of the jungle and you have been very powerful. But the man who killed you is also king amongst men, and he is the most powerful of men. So don't be disheartened that you were defeated by some ordinary person. And because of your connection with him at his moment of death, that many lives before, you actually had his ear. So he had good feelings towards you, but he had bad feelings towards me. That's why he disappeared on seeing me. So we come together like that, Sarita, in many different ways,
Right.
and from wherever we are in the universe.
So even in the same life cycle?
No, not in the same life cycle. This was a different life cycle, obviously, from Devlok to this Vidyadhar in this life, the fourth life, and
Yeah.
from Narak to the Ajgar.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there are different lives, obviously.
Ah, okay. All right. Okay.
So the Vidyadhar, the life of Bhagwan Parshvanath, who was born as this Vidyadhar in this life and becomes a monk, and the soul of Kamat
Yeah.
from Narak is born as the snake, who then eats up and bites the Muni Bhagwant, who is the Vidyadhar.
Okay.
This
But
is a different life.
was that in two different lives?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All
That
right.
is
Okay.
the next life. So the life that we discussed is obviously a different life from the previous life that we discussed last week.
No. So that was the fourth life of both of them, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So that was fourth life for both of them, but one was in Devlok and one was in Narak. The snake was in the Narak, wasn't it?
Yes.
And the Muni Bhagwant was in Devlok.
Yeah, in the previous life.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you.
So if I mean, do you want me to share the slides again? 1 second. You can see my screen. So
Yes.
let's see, how do I so life 1, Marubhuti and Kamat. Life 2, elephant and snake. Life 3, Dev and Narak. And this is life 4 that we learned about today.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? I know it's very nearly 9:40 now. You want to end? Or is there somebody with a burning question? No? Okay.
Just one quick question.
Yes, and
Um, uh, Krishna Bhagwan and Neminath Bhagwan were both cousins in the same era. Neminath Bhagwan's lifespan was about 10,000 years. And Sri Krishna was, well, about 125 or 127 years.
I'm not sure of that.
In the same era?
In the same era, but the lifespan that is you just quoted, 125 years, is probably from different sources. So if you look at the Jain texts, the lifespans would have been similar. I mean, the Krishna's lifespan would have been a bit shorter because of the what happens towards the end, and then how his life ends. But there's no sort of catastrophe in Bhagwan Nimnath's life, obviously, but it wouldn't have been that different. So I think you're probably looking at different sources. The 125 years that you quoted is probably not correct. But again, Chalaka Purush Charitra will have the Jain view on that, and I can look it up and try and get an answer for you next week.
Like Neminath Bhagwan was about 80,000 years ago. So 83,000, something like that.
Yeah.
And 10,000 years in one of the classes we had on the Thursday, it was mentioned as well, 10,000 years.
Yeah.
I mean, I was, as you said, I did look it up, and probably, I don't know, it might not be right, but I was surprised when it says 125 years. So if they were cousins, it would be.
So was it mentioned in that class, 125 years?
No, it was in that class. Neminath Bhagwan was mentioned, 10,000, around 10,000 years.
So where did you hear the 125 years for Krishna's?
No, I looked it up. So
okay. In Sri Salaka Purush Charitra?
No.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's take it offline. I'll try and bring you an answer next week.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Thanks.
Okay. All right. Let's end today's class. And I know a lot of these things are difficult for some people who have not been exposed to this. And again, the question of faith comes in as well. A lot of these are new terms, new concepts, but we'll get there. Just hold on to them, but do keep on asking questions. If I've said anything that is against the teachings of Jain Dharma, I ask for forgiveness. Chinagna virud kaibam bolyo ho, tesavi ho manuchan kaya kari tasmichami dugdam, sarvamangal mangalyam, sarkalyan karanam, pradhanam sarvadharmanam, Jainam Jayati Sasanam. Thank you very much to the Zoom team for not reminding us that we are running out of time and carrying on, spending your time. Thank you very much. Okay, see you all next week.